So first of all, thank you for spending the time out of your busy days to listen to me for the next half hour. For those of you that don't know me, my name's John Spooner. I work for an organisation called H2O. Has anyone heard of H2O? A few hands up there. So for those of you that don't know who H2O are, we're an open source software vendor, and we look to try and democratize AI. So how can we put AI and machine learning into the hands of more people, whether that be data scientists who want to accelerate some of their model building capability, or whether that be citizen data scientists who want to gain more value from the software. What I won't be doing at all is talking about any of our technologies over the next half an hour. Feel free to come over to our booth, which is somewhere over there. I can't remember what booth number it is. But feel free to come and talk more about your challenges and how maybe our software can help. Because I was in the customer experience theatre, I thought I should at least talk about customers. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about how some of our customers have embedded intelligence into their operations. Machine learning is a complete and utter waste of time, in my view, if you can't do anything with the output. If you can't move machine learning closer to where decisions are being made and where value is being generated, you're just wasting your time. And what I find over the years that I've been working in this industry, whether it be for H2O or other software vendors that I've worked with, this is the challenge that all organizations are finding when it comes to machine learning and artificial intelligence. There's a whole labyrinth of technology. There's a whole labyrinth of terminology. And no one really knows how do we accelerate the process of taking data and making decisions. And over the years, I've tried to really pinpoint, well, what does success look like with regards to AI? And what are some of the common themes that we're seeing with customers of H2O? And if there's nothing else that you remember over the next 25 minutes, I want to leave you with 5 key takeaways. So a bit like a comedian, I'm giving you the punchline before I actually tell you the lead up to that. So the key takeaways that I see are as follows. If you want to make AI a success, these are the things that you need to do. And what I will do is to go through a number of case studies where we've seen that. So number 1, treat AI as a strategic change management initiative. Number 2, build a cross-functional team. Number 3, have a balanced management of expectations. Number 4, select the right use cases to start with and then start to expand. And then finally, plan and manage your investments with regards to AI. So those are the key takeaways. But how have I got to those, and what are the things that you need to look at? Well, first of all, let's have a look at this one. Treating AI as a strategic change management initiative. There's a huge amount of FUD in the marketplace with regards to what AI is, and there's a huge amount of FUD of how AI is going to take away people's jobs and actually turn us into a very robotic society. Actually, what we have is technology and a process that can really help drive better decisions. So let's take a credit card company and a credit card organization. And if we look at financial services organizations, they've been doing the same old thing with regards to understanding which customers are going to be good, which customers are going to be bad since the 1970s. So it's a very, very well-trodden path. But the problem that they're encountering now is that the path that they're going down is just not good enough. Far too many bad loans are being made to customers, and far too many good customers are not being given loans. And they've needed to really look at different ways of analysing data. And they've traditionally looked at standard statistical methodologies. But the key is that financial services organisations at the senior level has gone, there must be a better way of doing this. We need to drive greater accuracy. And an organisation that we worked with in the United States, Underwrite.ai, wanted to disrupt that and said, can we use machine learning models to make better predictions than the ones we had traditionally? The challenge that the CEO had was there's a bad name around machine learning and black box models. And that doesn't work well with financial services, and it does not work well with financial service regulators. However, there's been a massive movement over the last 12 to 18 months of how do we open up these black box models and get more insight from them. So I could have spent another 20, 25 minutes just talking about model explainability. But the key message that I want from this particular example is the only way that this financial service organization started to change the dial was it was driven from the top. This is a quote from Mark Steen, the CEO of Underwrite.ai. And what he was doing, being that C-level executive, he was more than willing to challenge the status quo. He was more than willing to say, there must be a better methodology than the one that we're using at the moment. Traditional statistical methods use data at its heart, but because of the techniques that underpin those, trying to find more predictiveness out of that data has been quite hard. But you still need data to drive those decisions. So if an organization is moving down an AI strategy, it needs to have data embedded and in its culture. There needs to be this collaboration between different areas of the business, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But there also needs to be this understanding that you don't buy an AI solution off the shelf. You build the capability and integrate that into your operations. So number two, the key is that the data scientists that you have within organizations should not be the only people that are involved in your AI process. It is critical that you build a cross-functional team. That team should be made of data scientists because they know how to take data and do stuff with it. However, going back to my very first point, if you can't put it into an operational system, then the intelligence that has been produced by those data scientists is useless. So an example that I want to share with you, I can't give the name of the customer, but it's a manufacturing customer that produces many household products that you probably buy on a day-to-day basis. But they're an experts in supply chain. But what they wanted to do was take what they knew about the supply chain and the data within that and build more accurate forecasts that allow them to plan demand of their product to make sure that the right product was shipped to the right customer. And the key with this is they went to a data science team to build those forecasting models. But the challenge that they had was how do we then take those models and look to productionize that into the operational systems. So IT were responsible for the running and executing of that supply chain system. But we also needed to have people that understood supply chain, that were not data scientists, that were not IT, but were experts in the data and the nuances of the data. And this FMCG customer brought together those three disciplines well. So the data scientists could focus on building accurate models in conjunction with IT, who were responsible for running and operating that, as well as people that understood the nuances of the data. And by working together as a team and utilizing technology that was open and scalable, they were able to increase their forecast accuracy in just 6 months by 5 percentage points. which for them saved them huge amount of dollars. For any AI project to be successful, there needs to be a problem. And you need to then also understand, where are we currently at and what would the future look like if we solve that particular business problem? And you need to have all of these types of people involved in trying to answer that specific problem. What I've seen in the past is all of those responsibilities are seen to be, or should be seen within a data scientist. You're not going to find a data scientist that has got huge amounts of data science knowledge, data knowledge, IT knowledge, industry knowledge, and is under 30 and drinks in particular areas in London. It just doesn't happen. So you need to focus on what are the specialisms that you want to bring into building that AI solution. There's also the need to have a balanced management of expectations. So AI is seen as revolutionary and allowing organizations to change dramatically, but it will have its limits. It's not the magic bullet to solve everything. And when we went to see a blueberry manufacturer, so an organization called Hortafruit, what they wanted to do was they wanted to have a model that was 100% accurate. They said, we've heard about this machine learning stuff. We've got all of this data about which blueberries are being produced. Can we build a highly accurate model that predicts how fresh blueberries will be once they arrive at the customer? Because what they wanted to do was to look at where was the blueberry picked, when was it picked, what type of variety was it, what type of farm it was. Could they predict the freshness of that blueberry when it got to the client? And the challenge that we had with them is they just felt that they could get a model that was 100% accurate. What we had to do was manage those expectations. But what we wanted to do was not to manage them too much, that then meant they were overly cautious and that momentum was lost. But what we didn't want to have is that over-hypeness that gets associated with excitement with something new with regards to a project. So the key with this, as you're building that AI strategy, is you're managing those expectations. You're constantly thinking about, well, what data do we actually have to help solve this problem? Is it the right data? What's the structure of it? Is it clean? Is it dirty? What are we actually trying to do? What's the end goal and how are we going to get there? And are we trying to solve something that other organizations have already solved and we want to gain additional information from them to try and solve it in a similar way? Or are what we're trying to do completely revolutionary? Because depending on what it is will depend on how much expectation you can give to the business. And then there's also the other point here. Constantly, you need to have that executive buy-in. Next point that I want to make is really the case of you need to select the right use cases to start with and then expand then incrementally. A lot of organizations that I speak to look to try and solve the hardest problem first because they feel, well, if we can solve the hard ones, then the easy ones would just come after that. That's the wrong way round, because still a lot of organizations and people within organizations don't buy into AI. It's a sort of the way that someone described it to me about 3 or 4 years ago. For some people, it does require a leap of faith. People that have got a background in data science who think very logically can't understand why the business can't take what seems logical to them and embed it into business operations. For those people, it does require a leap of faith. And the way to do that is by identifying use cases and looking at those use cases and going through a checklist of, does this seem a good use case to test the value of machine learning and AI and allow people to start to believe in what you're trying to do when you're trying to challenge that status quo. So those first use cases, they need to be high value and allow you to put a monetary amount on that. If you can't show how is that use case going to increase revenue, decrease cost, or decrease risk, then it's not going to get buy-in from the business stakeholders that at the end of the day hold the purse strings. It needs to be achievable. So you as a team need to believe you can do it. It may take some work, but it needs to be realistic. And you need to have it to be time bound. The number of projects that I've seen that just go on and on and on because they're trying to build the most perfect solution. Again, it's a case of build something simple. Once you've then proved the value of the simple, now add layers of complexity, whether that be layers of complexity of data or layers of complexity with regards to the types of algorithms that are being implemented. So many organizations I see, they go, we want to do AI and we want to build a deep learning model. Well, they haven't even started with the basics of a simple statistical model. So God help them then when they're trying to implement a deep learning model. And again, going back to the point, do you have data? You don't have to have your data in the perfect shape and have all of the data, but you need some data to accelerate the building of these models. And if I look at some work that we did with a telco over in the US, they've now been a customer of H2O for 4 years, and they've got about 70 different use cases that they're utilizing with H2O technology at the heart of it, whether it be customer churn, subscriber churn, what is going to be the methodology for their 5G rollouts, whether it be predicting battery failures. They've got tens of these use cases, but they didn't try and solve all of those straight off the bat. They looked at, well, where do we already have some sort of buy-in to machine learning? Can we look to accelerate that process already? So you need to have that intelligent selection of those use cases, that identification of value, that clear focus on what you're doing, and the measurement of your ROI. And this may mean you have to experiment with finding the right use case. And if you are experimenting, you need to be creating an environment that allows you to fail fast. Whether that be fail fast with the data that you're utilizing, or fail fast with the type of machine learning approach that you want. There's no point in taking data, spending 4 months trying to build a model for a use case you thought was simple, to just find out that the value add was next to nothing. You need an environment that accelerates the building of that model. And I'm not talking about moving from months to weeks. We're now talking from weeks to minutes. You want to throw data, see the model, understand what's driving that model. Does it make sense? If it does, have technology to quickly deploy it in an open source environment. And if you don't see the value, quickly move on and quickly go into another round of use cases. And then the final thing is making sure you plan and manage your investment in AI well. Make sure you have that incremental investment. So don't go off and buy a large, big platform. Start off with something simple. Start off with maybe open source technologies that enable you to prove the concept out. Then once you've proved the concept, then start to look at scalable platforms that enable your data scientists to then accelerate their workload. But when it comes to a level of investment, what are the key things that you should be looking at? Probably about 80% of your investment is going to be made on people. So make sure you spend your time identifying people that have got a track record of solving these problems. But also make sure that they're focused on creating value. So many organizations focus on trying to find people that can build the most perfect solution, but those people don't want to run and operate a system. So how can you not only invest in people, but also invest in quick technology that enables those people to be far more productive? It's key with all of these use cases that you've got key KPIs being looked at. What are the KPIs that these particular use cases are going to be measured against? With all of the examples that I've seen, is you don't go with a big bang investment. You go with an iterative approach of investing in people, investing in technology, investing in data, and iterate through that as you prove more and more of that use case. We've talked about the practicality. So in terms of quickly moving out of your lab environment into a production environment. So many organizations spend, in my view, lots of time in the lab environment where these machine learning models don't make the light of day. So you need to make sure you are building frameworks to quickly get those models into deployment. But then you also need to think about, well, how do we repurpose anything that gets built? What you don't want to do is to have all of the IP that these data scientists are building internally in that data scientist's head. You want to make sure that any IP that's being generated is stored in a centralized platform or a repository to allow you to repurpose that process for other different applications. So data scientists may have found a way to extract the best value from some marketing data. Well, that same methodology could be then applied to maybe a credit risk function. So you need to have an environment that is very, very open and transparent. So hopefully I've given you a quick whistle-stop tour into some customers that are using H2O that have really used intelligence and the data behind that to drive business value change. And I really seen that the success of all of those organizations have been fivefold. So they've treated this AI initiative as a strategic change management. They've put governance around that, process around that, and had that driven from the C-suite. They've built this cross-functional team. They've understood the ability to take the expertise of a data science and embed that quickly into a decisioning process. There's that run and operate model run by IT. They have balanced well the expectations both of the business and other stakeholders, and they've done it in that iterative approach. Started with the right use cases that have value and then expanded that out, whether it be expanding the people or whether it be expanding the technology that they're utilizing. And then finally, they've looked to plan and manage the investment about the people, the technology, but always linking it back through to return on investment. So that's all I want to say. I finished 5 minutes early. So if anyone's got any, which for me is very rare. Usually I've got people dragging me off with a crook. So thank you very much for your time, and I do have time for questions if anyone has them.